Good evening, we're Freed Consulting. My name's Fatima, this is Rob, this is George, and this is Kathy. And also part of our group is Eleanor. Unfortunately, Eleanor couldn't be with us today. She's currently boarding a plane on her way to Paris. She's very upset she's missing today's presentation. However, there is something she has prepared for us earlier. Asbestos found in 1.2 billion Perth Children's Hospital. Potentially fatal flaw at the new RAH. Design and construction failures led to South Road overpass closure. Our lives are at risk from shoddy steel imported from China. Non-compliant building products in public construction cost taxpayers millions. The cause? A vicious cycle of short-sightedness and system failure that has seen a flood of cheap, non-compliant products flood the market and into our public works. The real problem is the lack of will, or the ability to force the adoption of a central system for monitoring and reporting compliance. But the marketing challenge for any technological solution is not the technical challenge, but rather the lack of awareness, interest, or stickiness of the issue. In other words, the market conditions that would make a solution more widely appealing and firm up the policy context that supports its very need. With this approach, the key influencers are, therefore, the general public, or the voting taxpayers, who can help raise the reputational stakes of inaction, both from government and the industry. Let's see what the average person has to say about product compliance in public construction.
Well, to be honest, I'm not exactly sure what product compliance is, but I guess when I think about product compliance, I'll think about products which are faulty or that don't live up to the marketing hype. They don't do what they say they're going to do. Yeah, that's probably what I think about it.
I have no idea what product compliance is. No, I guess the first thing I think of would be in a manufacturing process, adhering to rules and regulations. Maybe that, but I really have no idea.
Though they are ultimately the consumers of public spending on construction, taxpayers do not necessarily connect with the idea of product compliance as it relates to public construction, the same way as they would with, say, appliances or devices they buy directly and use every day. If they think of product compliance at all, they think of it in terms of standards, quality, durability, and safety. Or in the negative terms, waste, fraud, greed, and selfishness, which point to a powerful social value, one of human decency. Making people care about this issue will require some effort in bridging the cognitive gap between the products we indirectly buy as taxpayers and the broader societal value or expectation that the products we pay for should work as advertised, and certainly not harms. Only then is the stage properly set for a strategy that leverages higher reputational stakes to position product-wise as the natural solution to the technological challenge underlying the broader issue.
Great, so what Ella's done there I think is really just kind of encompassed everything and kind of summarised. Essentially what our pitch today is we're talking about a primary recommendation, which is a marketing campaign to the general public. And the idea behind the marketing campaign is it's to drive strong awareness, engagement and advocacy about this cause in kind of general society. The reason I've got this here as a primary recommendation is because when we went through the process, we actually identified lots of secondary recommendations. But when we spoke about it, we decided that actually the primary recommendation here is the enabler. It's the one thing that's going to enable us to do everything else later on. So the rest of this pitch is going to be talking about how we've thought about this campaign and how we could go about implementing it. So we started with a vision and a mission. We wanted to kind of have a look at the ProductWise website, what are the core kind of values there, but also what are some of the problems in the industry and what's the best way to frame this. So from a vision perspective, our vision is a built environment that is safe, sustainable and enduring for an Australia that we can all be proud of. And I think that's something that we can all relate to, but also the general public can as well. And our mission is to build an Australia that lasts. That's ultimately what we're trying to do here. So when we had a look at the stakeholders here, we were trying to figure out who are the stakeholders and how can we categorise them. And there seem to be three clear buckets: government, building industry and the general public. When we look at those, it's easy to break them down even further and kind of look at individual categories, but the things that they have in common are things that they're actually influenced by. So for example, government is largely influenced by the constituents and industry. building industry is obviously influenced by the government, and the general public is influenced largely by impacts on their lives. So how does it relate to them? When we were picking who we thought the best audience to actually go after in this campaign was, we decided that it was the general public. And the reason is that the general public influenced the government, and then the government influenced the building industry. So this is a nice way of actually ensuring everyone is caught up in this campaign. So from a campaign approach perspective, as I mentioned before, there are three kind of key areas that we wanted to touch on. The first one was awareness, the second one was engagement, and the third one was advocacy. If we think about the awareness side, we're looking at a marketing campaign which is more of a push strategy. It's to push it out there, make people aware of this cause, make them aware of the issues that are out there at the moment. The second stage of the campaign is around engagement. So it's actually giving those people now a way via a pull strategy to actually take action, to actually get involved in this cause. And examples of this might be signing a petition to the government that actually says, hey, we want you to do something about this, we've got our eye on you, kind of thing. And then the third one is advocacy. So again, another pull strategy, and it kind of builds. So once you're aware and you're engaged, how do we actually turn these people into promoters for the cause? How do we actually get them to push this agenda of ours further? So looking into the general public a bit deeper, we did a bit more segmentation, and we decided, well, the general public's made up of lots of different types of people, and we came up with three kind of key personas. So there's the independent young person who says, I'm not really sure how to define a public building, but I care about sustainability and stuff. We've got young families who are thinking, I want my children to go to a school that's, not going to fall down, or go to a hospital that's not going to, make them even worse. And then we've kind of got the golden oldies who they don't build anything to last anymore. Are the kind of things that they say that they're kind of living in the era of yesterday, where things were just kind of built and lasted for hundreds of years. The really important thing about defining these personas is not only do they have different drivers and motivators, but they also have different accessibility. So you can imagine trying to get an independent young person would be very, very different to going after a golden oldie. So it was really important in actually defining this, because it actually led to how we were going to implement the campaign. So starting off with, we're going to hear about recommendation one, which is some advertising.
Excellent. So the first obvious out loud, jump out there recommendation we're recommending is video and radio advertising. So the purpose of the video and radio advertising is to highlight why we should not tolerate non-compliant building works. The message of our advertising will be along the lines of, you wouldn't accept faulty car brakes in your car. You wouldn't accept a ceiling leak in your aeroplane. You wouldn't accept your mobile phone spontaneously blowing up. Why is it okay to have non-compliant building materials in public buildings? So I'm going to link this message up with a personal experience of mine. My family built, through a company, we built a house in a new estate. Now let me paint a picture for you. I will not identify the company, but we had a double-storey house. Now picture anything that can drip. We had 3 bathrooms, 3 showers, a kitchen and a laundry. From the first day we moved in, every tap and shower head leaked. As you can imagine, as a light sleeper, the repetitive dripping and the sounds drove me crazy. It took several workers to come out to our house, and over 4 months in order for us to rectify the situation. Over the years, we found out through our neighbours that they all had the same issue. And it was obvious or evident that it came down to the fact that the materials used were non-compliant and cheap products. So the video and ad advertisements, the channels we'll use are YouTube, our website, TV, social media, and primetime radio. The most important thing that these advertisements will ask is for the users to show their support on our website at ourstandards.com.au. Our advertisements will be based around hospitals, schools, public buildings, nursing homes. The website will ask you to show your support and set the bar by signing the petition to make an oath that you'll use compliant materials, as well as sign the petition to let government know that we endorse this legislation and we want it to happen. So the benefits of using this recommendation. Local and regional communities will be notified or educated about this new legislation. We'll also penetrate the market of different age groups, genders and economies. Radio advertisement is cheap. Our message will be communicated. And a 2016 report showed that 85% of Australians still watch commercial TV. That makes 6 out of 7 Australians that watch commercial advertisement. So some risks of this recommendation. The gold rush of advertisements, an overflow rush of advertisements. No connection with our main stakeholders. The reason why we've gone with Make Australia Great Again, or Build Australia That Lasts, is because this message creates a deeper meaning. Bad timing will mean no one will receive this message. And online, people skipping the ads or radio being background noise. So I'll hand over to
Thank you.
George.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Fatima. Hi, everyone. So our second recommendation follows on the same theme around public awareness, understanding of both the impacts and the consequences of non-compliant building materials. So following on from the ad campaign, we're looking at an interactive pop-up display homes in major locations and metro locations around Australia. So our target audience is going to be the general public, but obviously specifically independent young people, young families, and the golden oldies as well. So what is it and what's inside? So the house is going to be a simple structure, easily transportable, where members of the public are able to physically walk inside and interact with the building in a number of different ways using all of their senses. So inside we're going to have both compliant and non-compliant building materials to enable people to realise how difficult it is to distinguish the difference. And then we're also going to implement show some facts around the durability, the safety, the purchase cost, but also the life cycle cost of those non-compliant building materials, so people get an understanding of what are some of the consequences of using those. Now, we understand that building compliance and non-compliant building materials are probably not the sexiest subject to talk about. So a way to help interact with our public, we're looking at implementing sort of the latest technology. So looking at engaging with interactive apps on iPads, but also using VR or virtual reality goggles to enable the public to maybe put them on and then see what the difference would be and how compliant and non-compliant building materials will age in, say, 20 years' time. So you can sort of imagine you'll be able to see sort of, the non-compliant building materials that are probably sort of aged, cracked, broken versus the compliant ones. Also, that enables us to look beyond the facade and beyond the cladding, so that people can actually see what's behind the wall and get that deeper understanding. So this will help the general public to get a personal connection with the problem and sort of make that link between the issue that we're trying to promote and their own homes, their own schools that their kids go to, the places where they spend most of their time, being their workplace, and their own health and safety and the health and safety of their loved ones. So we're sort of tapping into that Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the sense of safety. Now, locations, so we're looking at sort of high profile, high foot traffic locations such as King George Square in Brisbane, Darling Harbour in Sydney, and of course Fed Square in Melbourne, recommending around about 2 to 3 weeks at each location. And the benefits. So benefits, we're based on our research and predictions, we're expecting around about 20,000 people to go through these houses over the 2-week period. Of those, we're anticipating approximately a 10% conversion rate to sign the petition. And then, of course, a bit of an intangible benefit. This creates an excellent opportunity for both celebrity endorsements and appearances, such as Scotty Cam from The Block. Public relations, so we can get into the newspaper, get onto the radio, get people to start talking about us. And also brand positioning and exposure, but not only for product-wise, but also for other industry partners to essentially position their brand, provide exposure, and also create that public association with quality and trust that's linked to, to I suppose the partners that are compliant. Cool.
George. All right, so the third and last recommendation, around raising awareness about building compliance is a social media campaign called Comply or Die. The foundation of this campaign is the Comply or Die game, which will be available free through all mobile app stores. With the game, imagine you, the player, navigating through a simplified urban landscape, trying to wisely find your path through non-compliant buildings. You essentially have to choose your own destiny between buildings, bridges, people, doorways, doors, and if you fail, you die. So I've got a little example of how this game would look like from a first-person perspective. Alright, so in order to spread the word about this social media campaign, we're going to have a Comply or Die social media hashtag, and we'll promote this across all social media platforms. Players can then share their scores and their Bitmoji, which is also known as an avatar, from the game showing how they died or won. So the social media aspect of the campaign will be promoted by celebrities from the home and lifestyle industry. For example, the Block celebrity participants, a celebrity landscaper, Jamie Jury, and our favourite, Scotty Cam. So studies have shown that advertisements that use celebrities that people have positive feelings about tend to have better results and tend to be a lot more successful than your standard advertisement. So with this campaign, we plan to target independent youth, young families and the building and construction industry because we feel that this demographic will utilise social media the most. However, we have identified a potential risk with this campaign. The public could potentially corrupt the social media hashtag of Comply or Die and potentially promote non-compliance within their schools, public buildings or even hospitals. So it can almost become a competition of who's got the worst or most unsafe building. So though that this may potentially be risky, it can also be quite newsworthy. And the way we can sort of manage this correctly is to just monitor the comments that are made in regards to the campaign, and also to balance the resulting public conversation. We'll present other views of building compliance and we'll invite builders, suppliers, manufacturers to show a job well done. So essentially stories that, which example buildings that they are proud of and which show good building compliance. So these stories will be shared across all social media platforms to combat any potential negativity. So, as you can see, social media is integral for this campaign, as not only will it allow our message to be exposed, but it will also develop loyal fans and generate supporters, which will in turn deliver more signed petitions. So now back to Rob to show us how we can make these recommendations happen.
Thank you. So just quickly recapping, what I've done here is tried to explain kind of the campaign coverage. You can see we've got our key personas up the top, and we've got our kind of key objectives here. The great thing about using all three of these media types is that from an awareness perspective, we can ensure that, you know, the game hits the young people, the TV ad, the young families, the radio ad, maybe the golden oldies. We've got the same thing from an engagement perspective. The game is really kind of going to be used by the kind of younger generation, the pop-up maybe the older generation. And from an advocacy perspective, I think the game and the social post is the real killer here to get the word out. But also the pop-up and the petition, there's lots of foot traffic, especially from young families in some of those areas. From a finance perspective, there's a much more detailed breakdown in the report, but essentially we looked at taking kind of a startup kind of approach to this, kind of growth hacking techniques. How can we deliver this campaign kind of in a really cost-effective way? We actually think we can get away with doing most of this for kind of less than $500,000, and the ROI on it is great. So campaign awareness, we're looking at 5 to 8 million people from a reach perspective. The engagement, we're looking at kind of 5,000 a week from foot traffic coming into these pop-ups, and then from an advocacy perspective, with that kind of social share and the little bitmoji of you dying, you know, which kind of gets your interest, we're hoping to get kind of social shares as well to help share the app. So from an implementation perspective, just to recap, we think the primary one is about how do we build momentum for the cause, and we think what that will do is it will lead us to actually, you know, growing out the product-wise product set, implementing it with more people, demonstrating a real product that works in the marketplace, and that eventually gets us to the point where we can have these conversations with government and say, hey, we're already doing this, people know about it because of us, and we have the product that solves the problem as well. So that's really the enabler at this point. Just quickly from a cost perspective, one of the things that we're going to be talking about in our report is actually how to go about this. So $500,000 is a lot of money to shell out on a marketing campaign. We actually had a good think about this, and we thought a nice way to do this would actually be to create an association with some of the builders in the group, and actually kind of all pull in and actually create something, a new venture that simply is for this campaign. The great idea about this is, one, you get to split your costs, but two, the individual ROI for your brand awareness is probably worth it on its own, and you actually get the campaign almost for free. So again, we'll talk about that a little bit more in the report, but that's kind of the suggestion that we go with. And that's our team, if there's any questions. Nope, none.
Well, there's probably a whole lot of questions, but as you say in the report, just some of the comments. I mean, there's a huge amount there. I can see what David's on about is 20 minutes isn't enough to pack it in. I'm not sympathetic though. So yeah, I like you brought in the fifth memory of team. That was a great way to do that, and it was good video. Full of content, brought in primary research, your interviews, I'm not sure if they were staged members of the public or they were.
Just enjoy the journey, mate.
It's great journey. You've got your hierarchy of needs, your social media, your celebrity, and you've brought it in and you've gone through, you've given us costs and benefits, cost-benefit analysis. Success stories. You've looked at the conversion rates. So questions. I'm not sure if I got questions. There's a whole lot to digest there. But congratulations, I guess. You've got your push, and then pull. So you've got your raising awareness, engagement, and then pulling them in or allowing them to adopt it. So there's a good mechanism there. Personal experience, the stories, the heartache, that was a key point, you know, and I suspect there's a lot of those stories out there. You know, I don't, because I live in a 110-year-old house. I live in a 110-year-old car, and, you know, the old phone, and the whole bit. But as a builder, I spent 20 years in the building game, and I saw it, and I got out of it. So there's a lot of those personal stories around, which is a mechanism to tap in and, you know, socialise it. But yeah, great job. I'll keep rattling on if you like. But
No, we're not letting go for too long, neither are you.
Thanks. A couple of things. Thank you very much. I thought that hung really tightly. The story was great. Storytelling was awesome. I love the use of the way you guys have opened it and had your buddy kind of present what she did and ask questions, general public. It was great to actually start it a little bit higher and talk about the mission and the vision. What I would ask for you, all of you guys, to start thinking about in the world that we live in right now with the millennials and what they are, most of you guys are asking for, purpose becomes really, really key. Every single brand that the agency works through, we always start going to purpose. And the purpose, you ask yourself, if tomorrow an alien race comes over and takes that brand away and it kind of disappears off all the shelves, of all the websites and whatnot, what would be missing in this world? Right now, your vision is actually really, really strong, mission, vision, and mission, but it's about building. Take the building out. Remember Simon Sinek's kind of golden circle, right? It's about the why. And it just so happens that we're making buildings, but you could apply that purpose to making cars, to services, to making drinks. Yeah, so try to go from a purpose standpoint, because then everyone can rally around your cause. So that's one thing. I love that campaign of that you wouldn't. I think that that's really, really strong. Two things on that. One is the PR stuff that you wanted to kind of do with the house. I would put a lot of time and effort into making that, doing whatever it is that you want to do in the squares where there's a lot of traffic, actually building that and making that into a point of conversation for people. I'm sure most of you have watched War on Waste that's going right now on ABC. Very simple. They just took one of those trams that go around, filled it up with coffee cups, and that's it. Everyone sees it and goes, what's that? They're like, that's a week's worth of coffee cups in Melbourne alone that we throw. Right? You guys can create a house to tell people 20 years into a house that doesn't meet compliance. Get rid of virtual reality. Show them an actual proper house. Show them the room that their grandma and their kids gonna live in. And now things are gonna start falling on the tug on the heartstrings. Now, as you tug on the heartstrings, I would question the tonality of the comply or die. I think the comply or die idea is great, but I question just the tonality of it, because you've gone nice and serious and kind of really tugging on the emotional heartstrings, and then there's an element of it that's a little bit playful. I think it's very subjective. My subjective thoughts are that you might be pulling it too much away from that seriousness by offering a way for people to kind of giggle and laugh a little bit, because that seriousness can go a long way for you guys. Yeah. The last comment is, it's a lot easier for you to build advocacy by focusing on one target market. So you've got three. Those three, I think, are actually great. You might want to think about how to have those as 3 target markets over a course of time. But you want to do one first. You know the old adage, if you're everything to everyone, you're nothing to no one. Right? So how do you build one group that will shout your message and your cause as loud as they can? And hopefully they shout it at the next group, and then over 5 to 10 years, you have another group of grandchildren. Yeah? Great job.
Thank you. What I like is, given that we don't have among all of us, the marketing experience, what you did is you've taken from the learnings and you've rationalised around this, and you've built a campaign that is incredibly cohesive. Given that you did choose those 3 segments, what you did do in the presentation was you showed which elements were talking to each. And so you married it up and sort of said, well, there's certain things that would appeal more to some than others. So I guess I could see maybe for the millennials, but potentially my response, and I'm not a millennial, I mean, he's the expert in the agency side, but I quite like the comply or die. I like the fun aspect of it, in that the millennials are actually living in a world where maybe they don't have a choice to have a house. So maybe the idea of comply or die could be something that they could run with, a bit like those campaigns that are meaningful to them, that the oldies, the golden oldies, never actually get to see what they're doing in that space. So it sort of works for them, but it doesn't actually have a negative effect on another audience. So I get the thinking around these things, and what happens when we put forward a campaign, of course, it's a starting point for a conversation. And so then you can modify these things if need be. But what I loved about it was the game and the co-opting by getting them into the petition. What you're trying to do is get advocacy by people actually doing something, and I love that aspect of it, because if you really get people who come through and like experience the built environment in the square or whatever, but then they don't actually do something, all they've had is another experience, and people have there's experience overload. What you're actually trying to do is get them on board with the cause. And I loved the idea of the advocacy of the influencers, or getting the influencers on board, because there could be a real story around this one once the radio and the morning breakfast people start talking about, is this really linked to Australian jobs or whatever? You could get that sort of conversation occurring around the demonstration that you're doing. So I think what you could do from this is sort of unpack this further, maybe take those ideas of comparison in terms of actually doing the build or what have you. I liked the idea of the virtual reality because it was using something that might encourage people to have the experience, because the challenge is getting people's attention. And I think that's why you chose the virtual reality. It was like, it's fun even trying this, and what we can see is see behind. And how many of us have been to auctions, or we know people that have prepared houses for sale and they just put a cover up, put some builder's bog over over half a wall and what have you. So I think in terms of taking all the knowledge and coming up with something cohesive, I'm super impressed. I think there's something there to have a real conversation, and whether you modify it or whatever, you've certainly got the logic around all of that. And even within budgets, you could sort of say, well, maybe you want to start stage one and do part of this, yeah, exceeded my expectation. Well done.
Thanks.
Great presentation too. I mean, look at the NGV presentation you gave, which is on film, which Andre does have. If you compare your performance in that, because you guys haven't seen the film, we all got to see it, compared to this, it's just chalk and cheese. Well done.
Thank you.